Matt.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
So
Sounds
3, 2, 1. One of the things that makes me most proud of being a broadcaster is the fact that many other broadcasters, including me, have an opportunity to make a little bit of a difference. And these days with podcasting, a lot of people can make a difference, as is the case with our couple, Matt and Monica, the Matt and Monica podcast. So nice to meet you guys. Brilliant to have you on for the new year for this very important topic.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
We are very thankful to be
an
on.
honor.
And yes.
I appreciate
And
it.
let's just tell the audience that these things happen serendipitously. I mean, I was looking at my LinkedIn, which I don't do every day, and I should, and I came across a note from Matt, and I followed up, and I did a little research, and it clicked. I said, I've got to connect with these two and really help them promote their thing and talk about the issues. So congratulations. Can we start with a little background before we talk about the podcast? The two of you have come through a lot, as we all do. And why don't we start? I'll actually start with you, Monica, because your
Okay.
story is one of resilience, which we'll be talking about. Please.
Thank
tell us.
you. So starting back when I was younger, had a normal childhood. My parents were divorced when I was like about 4. Had the split home, which I feel like is getting more common now, unfortunately. I went through high school, went to college for a year, and then long story short, after that, in 2003, about my life kind of flipped over into a very negative state. And for about 7 years, I was in an abusive relationship, and drugs were involved, and a lot of back and forth from New York to Kentucky. And I had 2 children. 2009, I ran for my life to get away from the situation. And I would like to say that my kids saved me from that situation. And since then, just trying to, do better in life. I've had 15 years of being clean myself and being out of that relationship. So just basically looking up from then on. And I feel like I need to, at some point, I haven't told my story yet on our podcast. So I'm dying to tell it. I'm just waiting for the right time. I know I have a lot of light and advice and awareness that I can help a lot of men and women out there that are going through the same thing. I feel like it's my calling,
Before we move on, and Matt will jump right in here, but
Yeah.
you said something very important. You have to wait for the right time. And people think, they see People Magazine and great articles about celebrities bouncing back from all kinds. They're human as well as the rest of us. And
Right.
we need the time to process and all that, don't we?
We do. I feel like if I didn't get through everything I went through in my 15 years, I wouldn't be where I am to be capable of helping other people in a good, healthy, positive way.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Matt, your story is one that is equally filled with activity. I put quotes around that. But as a veteran, I want to say, first of all, thank you for your service. I do as much as I can to promote veterans' causes. And I know this podcast is not all about veterans, but you certainly are one, and you know what veterans go through. So give us a brief picture. I know you also were a police officer for a while.
Correct. Yeah. I worked for a village police department back in 2011 to about 2013. And then I went from working law enforcement to working for the state park police as a ranger for a couple of years. And then I jumped in 2014 to an IT position, which I'm currently working at the same facility. I actually left for 4 years, went to a system engineering position, and then went back to a IT cybersecurity engineering position as of actually about a year ago. Yeah, just a little over a year now.
Let's not forget you spent some time in the military. That's
there's that too. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I served 8 years
I
as
thought
a
you'd be
combat
elbowing
engineer.
you by now at this point.
Yeah.
Should have been.
So yeah, I actually in 2014 as well, the same time frame that I went into IT, I enlisted as a combat engineer. And after graduating basic training, I was assigned to a counter mobility unit. So we did the job that nobody else really wanted to do. We emplaced obstacles to limit enemy movements.
And you were positioned where? In Iraq, Afghanistan? Where
no,
were you?
I've actually never deployed. I went to pre-deployment training 3 different times. I went to NTC and JRTC, which anybody that's been in the military that's been to either one of those places, they probably quiver. A lot of people don't like them, but
Well, no matter where you're deployed or where you're ordered to go and do whatever your assignment is, it's important to the mission, and you know
correct.
Hmm.
you and your colleagues have accomplished so much and have sacrificed so much.
Yeah.
So, Monica, you gave us
Hmm.
a little taste as to what your story is, and you'll be revealing it on your podcast when time is
Yeah.
right. But
Yep.
Matt, in terms of your particular challenges
Mhm.
along the way, I know you're focusing on mental health as we all should, but
Yeah.
just in general, where has this brought you, and where have you come from in that area, that realm?
So, I always never, even though talk about this quite often, I never really know where exactly to start because there's a lot of different places where I could. But I like to go back to last year. Well, let's go back to 2020. In 2020, I lost my sister to a battle with opioids. I say overdose, but she, I believe, had liver failure for long-term use. Over the past few weeks of her life, she got yellow and jaundice, and she ended up passing away. And that was a long battle. And watching what my parents went through for damn near 20 years on and off, it's one of those things that affects so many people in this country. And it's one thing when it's your sister, but when it's other people that unfortunately at this exact moment can't really disclose, but when it's other people you love and care about, and you watch these people make these negative life decisions that it everybody, including them, know is going to impact their lives negatively. It's brutal. It's a different type of adversity. It's different than dealing with, because I've never had a substance abuse issue, but in the flip side of it, I don't know what would be easier, being caught in the actual act of being addicted to stuff, or just watching somebody else go through the motions.
And you feel helpless because you can't help
Correct.
because they're not accepting the help.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. And the
Yeah.
pain that they're going through
Mhm.
prior to getting addicted is something that is often ignored. I mean, the
Yeah.
fact that people
Yeah.
just don't take drugs to just be high all the time, they take drugs to escape pain,
Yeah.
physical, emotional, spiritual. So it's a huge issue. And I know that's one of the things you're focusing on when you're working with others in the podcast. So
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit about this idea of throwing on the headphones, getting some mics together, and really doing something that is very impressive. And I'm going to indicate why I think it's extra impressive in a minute. But the podcast idea, where did that stem from, guys?
It was quite random, and if you knew me better,
Yeah.
it wouldn't shock you because I'm a pretty random individual. But even when I enlisted, I drove by the recruiter's station and just
Very spontaneous.
yeah, and I have no regrets when it comes to that, because that has been me my entire life. But in the midst of adversity of last year, I hit a point. It was September, and I checked myself into the VA for a mental health evaluation because, and I wasn't suicidal. And generally, if I ever heard somebody talk about checking themselves in, I would assume, oh, they're about to kill themselves or they're thinking about it. And I wasn't, because I've always had purpose. I've never been lacking purpose. And if anything, I have more purpose now, even going through adversity, than I've ever had, which I think is
Mhm.
its pinnacle. It's imperative to realize that. And when I checked myself into this for this evaluation, I realized in the process, which again, I won't go through the whole story. I have a YouTube video where I discuss this experience. But long story short, I had a VA police officer that was there that sat down next to me in the waiting room, and he just sat there and listened to me, asked me if everything's all right, and it was quite evident things weren't all right. And I opened up to him. This random stranger, I've never seen him before. He was a combat veteran in Afghanistan. And I not only when I was, spilling my guts to this guy, I was quite emotional as well. He's interrupted me to ask me questions. Just he just appeared like he cared so much. And that impact that had on me, the influence that had on me, it was very beneficial. And it's cool because I shortly after wrote a review for this individual, and his chief of police acknowledged him. He got acknowledged with what's called an eye care award, which made me feel quite good when they told me that. And I think that kind of helped plant the seed as well. But you fast forward, so that was September of last year. November is when we started this podcast, and we had a lot going on in November, good and bad. If I'm, feel free
No,
to fill
yeah,
in the
I'm
blanks.
just
If
listening.
there's,
Go ahead.
okay.
Yeah.
So in November is when we recorded our first episode, and our first episode was just Monica and I just talking, because one thing that has been rock solid in the past 8 years of my life has been our relationship.
Mhm.
And you know, it probably annoys the hell out of some people, but there's a lot of people out there that need to have hope and just be like, hey, like
Yeah.
relationships do exist that are really that good. Don't settle. And that was our initial, I think, message, like, because we've been inseparable. And
Yeah, but it's like we talk about the little things that make it work, like communicating and stuff, which a lot of people don't do. But when we first thought about doing the podcast, we didn't really think it would go anywhere. We weren't
Yeah.
really taking it seriously. We're like, let's try to do relationship stuff at the beginning. People can relate to that, big time. So we thought we could have fun with it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, you know, I think that was one thing we disclosed very early on in that first episode was, you know, our relationship didn't start out smooth sailing. You know, we learned the power of forgiveness very quickly, and it's been
Yeah.
a game changer ever since.
You know, I wrote down, I'm always jotting things down. I wrote down several things, and one was vulnerability and the fact that you, Matt, expressed your vulnerability to that stranger, but you knew enough to go to get help. And what was your reaction, Monica, when he did decide to check in with the VA? I mean, were you thinking, I'm glad he made this decision? Did you help him? Did you push him along? Just a little background on that.
Right. So he will often say how I said to him one time, and was this before you went
But
there?
it was the same time frame.
Okay, so I was like, I'm worried about other people, but I'm really worried about you right now. And I knew he wasn't suicidal, but it was taking a drain or a toll, I would say, on, his mental state, his physical state, everything. So I was extremely worried. I honestly think he just went to the VA and didn't tell me. So I was like, wow, that took a lot of strength. And I knew he needed help that like I couldn't help him with.
I didn't tell her immediately, like before prepping. I told her
Right.
that day that I think, there and going there,
Okay.
though. Just want to
clarification. But we're like, I didn't push him to do it.
Yeah.
I guess at that time though, I was just like, what are we supposed to do? Because we're trying to do this, trying to do that. And that was a huge step. So I was very proud and thankful that he did take that big step.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, vulnerability used to be a no-no if you're a guy, particularly.
Right.
And in this day and age, and I can speak from experience, it's the greatest sort of freedom lift you get when you realize you're not alone and you realize there are people who will listen. And that's what you've done now with the podcast. And I've listened to several excerpts, is you've gone ahead and gone from just the two of you to inviting other people into your world. And I'll have you talk about some of the guests and so forth. But the thing that impresses me, this blows my mind, is the fact that you will drive on many occasions for 3 days in a snowstorm to meet with somebody in person to interview them. And I got to be I'm honest with you. I mean, I go to great lengths, but I can't do that. And are you? Is this your style, Matt and Monica, or have you just decided we're going to do it up right?
It's it's one of those things that we'll use Bernard Tony Jr. for example. This individual had a story that was so beautiful and profound in the adversity that he was able to overcome. And with him working at the White House and whatnot, I'm just like, I listened to him tell his story on a couple different other podcasts, and I shut it off quite quickly because I like hearing things firsthand. I don't like the. We
don't like to know too much. We like the real raw.
I think that's very impressive, and I think it works. It works for me a lot too. Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's a level or a layer of vulnerability that you're able to capture in person opposed to remotely, but not to say you can't capture very important things remotely as well. I think you definitely can. I think out of the respect of the individuals, I'm trying to find time, and we both work full time, so it's very difficult traveling, but it's just for what we're talking about and the seriousness of it. I like having that person. I like having that eye contact in front
that connection.
It makes such a difference. Absolutely. And I wish I could do more of it myself, but you mentioned Bernard Tony, and here's a great example. I mean, this guy worked in the White House, a physician, amazing background in the military, but
Mhm.
also a real human being with some
Yeah.
some serious challenges.
Yeah.
Give us just a thumbnail as to what that is about, so people can go and hear the podcast in total.
So about Bernard, and like we found him on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. People are like, how do you get these people on? We just ask.
Yeah.
I started a conversation with him and he was like all for it. So we planned a time to go down there. It was pretty amazing how he welcomed us with open arms
into
in his
his
home.
living room.
Yeah. And that is so humbling for us. And just being in the presence of someone like that, we hold people like that pretty high, and I know they're just normal people like us, but to me, they're kind of not.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing.
Just for clarification, he's a 22-year combat vet. He was a medical officer for both President Trump and Biden from 2018 to 2022. He's currently a medical service provider globally for embassies. And more importantly than his accomplishments, though, which I think it's far more relevant. Yes, it's like great. These are incredible
Right.
accomplishments. It's like what you overcame to get there, to me, is what's more profound. And
His journey.
Yeah, because I think if people realize that they're able to overcome these insane circumstances and they're able to accomplish so much after overcoming that, it's like, I think that's the only thing that's really missing in this world is hope. And when people see like, okay, and I'm saying this from my own experience, and more important than, even Bernard Tony Jr. from my experience was my, our first episode with a guest, which was a Veterans Day special of last year. Sergeant Matt Kinney. He was my combat medic for 8 years, and I spent a lot of time with this guy. And I heard stories for years of these 3 soldiers that died in Afghanistan in my old unit. And it was just hearing Sergeant Kinney tell me what happened in Afghanistan, losing those 3 soldiers when he was the first medic on the scene, experiencing what he experienced, and then, losing them and coming home to going through his significant other at the time, moving across the country with his child. I'm just like, it clicked in the middle of that episode. It just clicked. I'm like, this is it. Like, this is the ticket. At least for me, it's like, there's nothing more powerful than hearing somebody make it through their suffering, which we're all going to go through. You're not going to avoid human suffering, and it's how you react to it that's so damn important. And this guy, there's been many times over the past 2 years where I've been scrolling through my phone just looking for somebody to talk to, very emotional, and because what I'm going through is just it's brutal, but it's also valuable, because I believe, stronger the adversity, the farther you go.
I can sort of come to grips with all of this and understand it very much, because I've gone through my own trials and tribulations with a great successful career. A doorbell that's ringing, by the way. A great successful career, wonderful family, great relationships. But I lost my first wife to cancer. I also had dealt with, over the years, depression, serious depression, not suicidal tendencies at all, but the kind of horrible darkness that envelops you. And just to add a little fun to the mix, I also have Parkinson's disease. You'd never know it. I'm wearing a boxing sweatshirt because that's what I do. I work out like a fiend, and I'm deciding, and I have decided, and this is something I want to ask you guys about, that I've got a choice. I've got a path I can take. I can either feel sorry for myself and just wallow, or I can look at the alternatives and the opportunities in the now to do what I can to make myself stronger. So that's what I love about what you're doing. You're talking about resilience and vulnerability, and I think another thing you're talking about is empathy. Where does that stand in your work now with the podcast and in your lives? What do you think about the empathy gene?
Man, it's so important. And I think the way you make other people feel in this world it's right up. There's so many things that are like pillars, I call them, or General Lucky called them, but having empathy for other individuals is it's so important.
Like, I feel like I'm a very emotional person, and I always put myself in other people's shoes and get so invested in how they're feeling or how they can get help. And sometimes I feel like it's a curse because I get so deep emotionally involved in it that I just cry or whatever. But but it's a good thing, because I think more people need to be like that and feel for people and not judge them so much, because we don't know why things are happening sometimes the
so
way that they are. Right.
It's so easy to judge somebody, and it's
Sure.
so easy. I think putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, and
Mhm.
you know, and it stems from their upbringing, because you know, there's a song, you know, "Don't Judge an Addict," and it's kind of a newer one. I really enjoyed it, and it was profound to me, because with my sister, for example, I remember telling her kids, my nephew and my niece, when they were younger, like, you know, and they were aware of what the bad choices their mom was making, and I think knowing that it's so simple to go to a party, have a couple drinks, somebody puts something in front of you when you're already under the influence that you otherwise would never touch. I mean,
Mm.
it's so easy. And
Mhm.
I'm fortunate to the extent that I've never been around it, but I think that is part of it, just keeping yourself away from that stuff. But back to the empathy, got my doorbell ringing. Back to the empathy. I think that's kind of kept me moving as well. You just listening to people tell me stories that are, you know, not that you can compare struggle, but you know, that are just as bad, if not worse or more profound than mine. You know, you mentioned, you know, losing your significant other, and we had Alessandra. She lost her, or excuse me, Alessandra was our 13th episode, and she passed away. She was walking her dog with her husband Memorial Day weekend this year, and it was Monica's best friend, and
Mm.
that changed my life. Like,
Perspective.
Yeah.
I'm just almost overly emotional too often, because I wake up
Yeah.
every single day and I'm looking at her and I'm like, you know, I don't know what's temporary and what's not now, and it scares the living hell out of me, because she's my rock, and
Yeah.
I believe she went through what she went through to
Well,
be here for me.
it's so true. You know, the fallibility, and we live in a world and a culture that celebrates success and celebrates, you know, hits and clicks and all that kind of nonsense. And it really doesn't matter, because ultimately we're here for a short time doing the best we can. But you said something very important, Matt, and that is, when you connect with other people now, and you're doing this on the podcast, when you reach out, when you ask questions, when you listen, when you converse, the impact on the guest is one thing, we know, but the impact on the listeners. So what I've discovered in my radio days, and I've had a long career, is that people are natural eavesdroppers, and they want to listen into something that's going to affect their heart and soul, as well as make them laugh or get angry, whatever. And I think what you're doing is, through conversation that people can eavesdrop in and really take in, you're providing a great service. You're allowing people to realize they're not alone.
Yes.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's our goal. We want people to listen and connect, and that's why we have such a broad audience, because everyone goes through stuff. And if anybody out there connects with any of our guests or even our own personal experiences, like that's our goal. We want them to connect and to listen and have something click and be like,
Yeah.
oh, Matt and Monica are talking to this person, or from their own experiences, this is what they have done to help overcome it, or right now this is what they're doing. I'll try that in my life. And we've had feedback where people are like, I've tried this and it's helped. And that's what keeps us going.
It's a tremendous legacy, without boasting about it or anything. It's, you're making a difference simply by talking about stuff and sharing stuff. And Matt, your particular interest with your colleagues in the Army and the reserves and all the services, I mean, this is a huge issue in America today, the PTSD, the forgotten veterans, and all that kind of stuff. So, have you been hearing from vets, new listeners, connecting with guys and gals who might have some reaction? And if so, what's it been like?
Yeah. Been connecting with a lot of friends, and I will say, so we had somebody from my unit actually commit suicide the 23rd, so just a couple days ago.
So sorry.
And I didn't know him too well. You know, I was around him, and when he was in a separate platoon, but you know, it hit a nerve at this time, you know, right before holidays. Like, the friends and family of his, yeah, it's
Yeah.
one of those things that we've had a lot of friends that have reached out that are, you know, both in the military or from my prior unit, and we've had people reach out that we don't know, and law enforcement as well. And sorry, I kind of got stuck on a tangent there.
No, not at all. One other note that I wrote down, because I know you're all about helping first responders in any realm. I wrote down caregivers. And the reason I wrote that down is because in America, in the West particularly, the population is aging, and more people are forced into caregiving for their elder parents or relatives or their younger children or somebody else's children. Grandparents are
Hmm.
raising grandkids, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And not enough attention is paid to the needs, the emotional needs of caregivers. But it sounds to me, and I've followed you a bit now, that this is another aspect of what you can do. You can allow people who do the tough slog every day to realize resilience is a muscle you can build, and to also say thank you to them. Monica?
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like there needs to be more awareness and emphasis on people, not just the veterans or the first responders, but those people that are kind of in the background that people don't think about. It's hard for them to do their job anyway. So getting the help and support that they probably don't ask for, that's, I think that needs to be talked about
Right.
for sure.
Well,
Yeah. And
Monica,
go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say Monica being, I'll say a caregiver working at elementary school. I think it's a very similar,
Sure.
I guess similar dynamic to even taking care of the elderly, for example. There's a lot of lacking areas in both of those
Mhm.
things.
Right.
The school systems, and there's just so much that right now in the society that has
Mhm.
changed over the past, even since I was going to school 20 years.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's almost no accountability anymore.
Well, let's do this. Let's talk about the logistics here and the fact that your podcast is growing in numbers. You've got a YouTube channel, you've got all the social media stuff. Before we wrap, I want you to tell everybody the best way to connect with you. But you also are asking for people, if they want, to help
Mhm.
with some financial support. And you're not in this to make money. You're not in this
Mhm.
to be one of these influencer groups,
Right.
but it's important because you want to expand. So what are your plans? What would you like to do with this?
Honestly, if we could, yeah, I've never been one to ask for money, and it's been one of those things. It's been very difficult, but
Mhm.
we have a lot of plans as far as if we just reinvest into marketing. One of the things I would like to do is, if we interviewed somebody that has, say they were an entrepreneur and they overcame adversity, allow them
Mm-hmm.
to pay for marketing of their own episode. We'd make
Mm-hmm.
nothing off of it, but it would, however, it would boost our views and whatnot, and it would help spread our message. And it would kind of be a win-win, especially if we're putting 100% of it directly
Sure.
into marketing. Long term, we would love to be able to travel and do this, and we have people lined up all over the country. We have 16-year CIA operative Nick McKinley. We're supposed to be recording. He invited us out to. Shouldn't say he. His assistant invited us out to Whitefish, Montana, to record in person. He's known as the real Jack Ryan. He was Special Forces prior to going into this, and we have Navy SEALs and Green Berets all over the country that we've
Mhm.
talked to and networked with that all agree to do in-person podcasts as well. And man, it's nice to be able to drive out and see these people and do this in
Yeah.
person. But if there was an ability to be able to do this and have
Mhm.
fuel reimbursement or something like that, that would also be nice.
Yes.
But
Well, I mean, I just said earlier that this is a real sacrifice on your part, and
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
being forced into this. You're doing the heavy lifting. The other
Yes.
thing that's interesting about your sites and all the social is the fact that you are appealing to people who want to be guests, which
Yeah.
is really cool. You're doing an outreach. I mean, a lot of people have producers and make the phone calls and all that. But Monica,
Right.
that's a really cool thing. And tell us
Mhm.
about the response and what you hope for.
Yeah. So we like having such a broad audience, like I said before, because everyone in the world can connect with our guests and their stories. But it's kind of cool because when we find people on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, and we just ask them to be on, it's kind of amazing. People are like, how did you get this person on? And they just say yes. We just ask, and people want to tell their stories. Other people want to help other people, and since we have this, platform and we can reach, anyone in the world, it's very likely that they'll be, their voice will be shown or
Mhm.
heard.
Right. That's true. Anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
I've been doing this a long time now, and I'm amazed and blown away when I know I've got listeners in Timbuktu and,
Yeah, right?
and Tanzania and
It's pretty
Vietnam,
amazing.
and that's the beauty
Yeah.
of the internet. There is some good things, believe it or not, about social media, and this is
Right.
one of them.
Yes.
So what's the best way for people to find you? I mean, I know, but tell the audience, Matt.
I mean, our primary outlet's on YouTube, but we do have a website, the mattandmonicapodcast.com.
Right.
If you Google Matt and Monica, you'll see us on the top of the search engine results, which is pretty cool. That's kind of a newer thing.
Well, you got alliteration working for you, Matt and Monica. If it was Matt and Winona, it would be a little tricky, but Matt and Monica works beautifully.
Hopefully easy to remember.
I just want to say that I've had a lot of experience working in the industry, interviewing people, and every time I interview somebody, I learn something. And I hope that's going to be the case. I think it is with you guys. Every time you have this interconnection with a new guest or several people, your life changes, not always in a good way, but certainly it changes. And I hope for you that you get the same warmth and benefit as you seem to be.
You almost took the
Going forward.
words right out of it. I was
Yeah.
just saying this to her this morning because we talked to a SWAT officer from Georgia, a great guy. And I'm like, you absorb, I believe you absorb a little piece of
Yeah.
everybody you interact with. And that's
Yeah.
good or bad. That's why I think it's really important when you're surrounding yourself with people to make sure you try to surround yourself with the right people.
And you
Well,
want
with
to
you,
leave. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Monica, please.
I was just going to say, we might absorb stuff too, but we hope that we live little bits and pieces of strength and hope and love and everything and motivation to people that we talk to as well.
Yeah.
Well, with your permission, and you may not want to say yes immediately, but then again, I'd love to send some people your way, just recommend some people, link you guys
absolutely.
up with some amazing folk who have changed my life, and I'm sure they would be delighted to participate. So that a good deal? You guys
We would love it.
down for
Yeah.
that?
I'll do the same for you as well.
All right,
Yes.
super,
Yeah.
great. Matt and Monica, terrific couple, and not to suggest that life is easy. You've got 5 kids between you. How many dogs?
One dog.
One
Oh,
dog
just
now.
one.
Yeah,
Well,
we used to have 2.
Yeah, our other one that was on our podcast cover, she got all 3 tick-borne illnesses at the beginning of this year in February, and she passed away.
Yeah.
Well, her soul is in heaven, and
Yeah,
and I just think you guys are awesome. And by the way, just for what's and giggles, you're a good looking couple. I mean, you guys could be
Appreciate it.
models
Thank
for crying out
you.
loud.
appreciate it,
I
man.
like those white headphones you're
Aw.
wearing,
Thank you.
Matt. Those are very sharp.
Thank you.
You and I,
appreciate
Monica,
it.
are wearing the traditional
the dark
black,
ones.
yeah, the dark one. Guys, thank you so much. God bless you, and may
Thank
this
you.
may this be a journey that we all take together to heal ourselves and others. Thank you very much.
Amen.
Thank you very much as well.
Thank you so much.